cool.
Susannah Grant is here.
We are so excited to have Susannah here. I'm such a big fan of your work, and it was such a pleasure to go back and look at In Her Shoes again. It just was so charming, so funny, and just works like crazy.
And it's so alive and so alive.
Thanks.
So filled with life.
Yeah, I like that about it.
So we are going to be talking about process. I've got so many things I want to ask you, but I'm going to start. This is always a good policy when you're talking to another writer. Start with compliments, specific compliments. But I just want to mention some stuff, just like moments that I loved. The scene on the park bench with Shirley MacLaine and the old woman who played Dora, where it was such a powerful, funny, emotional scene. I was just in awe of that scene because you're finding out so much kind of mind-blowing information from characters that are introduced fairly late in the movie, and I just loved that scene so much.
Yeah, thank you. But that's a tricky scene. I think a lot of credit for it has to go to performance because it very easily could have been maudlin.
Well, yeah, I said it was like
been melodramatic, but and that whole part, Shirley's whole part could have gone that way, and she was very careful about. I mean, it's not her instinct to do that anyway, but it was something she was very aware of, and obviously Curtis was very aware of too. And they just had such a. And their physicality is so wonderful too, the two of them sitting there next to each other.
Well, they played it so real. They didn't overplay it at all, because I wrote here, it's easy to cross over into the melodramatic, but yet it was just flat out moving. Two actors sitting on a park bench, and I thought it was wonderfully written, but it was also one of those things that you're just going, this is either going to be the best scene in the movie, or
I'm going to run screaming
really,
from the theater.
Yeah, go, why did I put so many words into that?
This is what I hate about movies. That's what it could have been.
Yeah, but I loved that. Now I wanted to ask you this, because this, to me, seemed like a girl thing. But the scene where Mark Feuerstein and Toni Collette are first making love, where he keeps turning the light off and on, and she turns it off.
Yeah.
Was that in the script, or?
You mean in the book?
Well, in the book or
yeah,
the
it was
script?
in the script. Yeah, it wasn't in the book, but a lot of the character's discomfort with her body was in the book, and I had a feeling the character, once we cast her, was not going to be as heavy as she was written.
What made you think that?
Well, there are some very good
A great big
heavy-
fat birdie told you.
exactly actresses, but this wasn't going to be a movie they were going to make for $2 million. This was a movie they were going to make for $30 million, so they needed cast, that whole thing. So, but then the truth is, the range of weights of women who have discomfort with their bodies is so great that I don't think the character needed to weigh, whatever she weighed in the book to experience that. And Toni did put on weight for the role. And, she put on like 30 pounds, the poor girl. And then they put her in a coat so you couldn't even see it. She'd sit there in rehearsals just slugging down milkshakes and lift up her stomach and say, I'm working here.
Is she the best actress who was in the
Pretty
in
darn
the world?
good, right?
She's
Amazing.
a really amazing
Yeah.
actress.
Yeah, so I wanted a scene that really, I honestly, I can't remember in the book how she wrote that aspect of early intimacy with someone when you're not comfortable with your body. I don't remember how I don't think it was with the light.
Well,
Pretty sure it wasn't,
I
but,
actually made the
you need a
assumption that you
short way to
came up
do
with
it.
that because I did not read the book, but it is such a visual way to say
right.
everything.
Right.
And, I've been there.
Yeah, who hasn't?
I've also had my days when I wanted the light on too, but
Yeah, everybody's
you
been
know.
everywhere.
yeah, we've been all those places.
Yeah,
Many.
so you need a short visual thing to make up for what was probably a very long, complicated internal thing in the book.
So that was something that was in your script. You know, I actually have, I feel like I just want to just do this one other moment that I really, really loved. But then I want to talk, just, you know, sort of talk about the book and how, kind of how you came to it and how you made that decision. But I just love the moment where Dora is in the wheelchair and you think she's dead. And Maggie goes over to her and says, "Are you dead?" Because you're just like going, "Oh, please don't make the old lady have died." The one that with all the funny lines. And
I'm gonna need some laughs.
yeah, really. Oh my God. And then she says exactly what, you know, what you're thinking, rather than
Right.
Dora. And
cut
then
to
later in the movie, you do foreshadow the guy that does die, but
Right.
without that wind up to it.
Right.
It was done in such a different way. Can you just talk about, I mean, did you think about those two scenes?
Well,
really?
you know, I had written that she was exhausted, you know, and stopped in her wheelchair and the line, "Are you dead?" But, you know, I wasn't there when they staged it. I mean, staged it perfectly in the way she's kind of slumped over, you know. And, you know, that's just Curtis knowing what you need to see.
Did you work on a draft with, I mean, did you do like a whole draft that was like with him
Oh,
and
yeah.
with his notes?
Yeah.
And so that was like, I mean, I don't.
Well, let's just
usually
start.
get this technical,
But let's start at the beginning. So, did you develop this with the producer, and then Curtis Hanson got involved?
With the producer, Scott Free, the folks there, and with Fox. Fox 2000, which is a small division of Fox, and really smart people there. And they sent me the book, and I read it, and honestly, I read it and thought, no, I'm not really sure I know what to do this. But I love these guys, so I'll go in and I'll talk to them about it. And I went in and sat down.
That sounds familiar.
Yeah, you've gotten jobs up. Like, oh, I'll just go in.
I actually have gotten more. I've wound up doing more things. I rarely look at something and I go, "Fantastic! I love it. I'm perfect for it." It's always like, "This is how it could go horribly wrong," or, you know, it's like,
Right.
it's okay.
To
But
see all the
then you can
pitfalls.
Right.
invest yourself in it. Or so, what was it that you just didn't?
You know, I got talking to them about it, thinking, okay, I'm probably not going to do it, but let's have the chat. And sort of in the process of having the conversation, got kind of excited. You know, you think, well, you could do this, you could do this, you could do this, and then you find yourself saying, and I could do that, and I could do that, and it sort of becomes something you want to do just by talking about it. I hadn't really stumbled into something backwards like that before. And then I walked out of the room and thought, okay, I want to do it. They'll never make this movie. They won't make this movie. So I called
And
up.
what made you? Just can you talk a little bit more about what made you think they're never going to make this movie?
Because it's a female movie. It's a female movie, and the audience, you know, it's marketing people are in every, you know, it's just they're slower to make them. You know, I mean, I have a pretty good batting record with them, but I was sure I was going to whiff sooner or later. You know, and this is going to be the one. I was going to write a really great script, and the guys who run Fox were going to look at it and say, "Yeah, it's sweet, it's lovely, it's moving." Nah, you know, let's make Blade 7 instead. And so I said to them, I can write a really good script, but I don't think you're really going to make it. Are you really going to make it? And they said,
Sure.
no.
Yeah, but they weren't
actually
lying
said-
this time.
Yeah, no, I'm a little embarrassed to say how they convinced me, because they said, "You're too expensive to fuck around with," and we're investing a certain amount of money with you. And I thought, oh, well, they're right about that. They're making them pay me a lot to write it. They must really be serious. So,
I love that you just said that, I gotta say. Don't be embarrassed.
well, I'm a
Proud.
wasp. We don't talk about money.
I understand.
Stupid.
But you're in
But
show
anyway,
business now.
It was a way of exactly. I'm a wasp in show business. I talk about it. But yeah, I
That
mean,
was
it was
their
clear
motivation.
to me that if they were going to pay me what they were going to pay me to write the script, they weren't just, you know, dipping their toe in the water. They were serious about it.
Well, they'd also had, I think they made some money off the Banger Sisters, that same studio. So maybe they were sort of, who knows? Whoever
Absolutely.
knows why these things get made. But sometimes when a studio has a moneymaker in an area and there's a little void in the marketplace, it actually can work to your advantage, even though the very thing that you think won't work may go over to the other side and be a reason to do it.
Yeah, and they're really smart about not setting themselves up for failure. They said, nobody made their fee on the movie. They all had really complicated back-end deals, that...
By
and they
nobody,
said,
you
"We're not-"
mean the actors?
Yeah, I mean, Curtis, Cameron, all those folks worked for less than they usually work for, and just, in the long run, they'll probably all be okay. But you shouldn't, I don't think you should make a movie like this for more than they made it for, which was $30 million.
Yeah,
because then you
absolutely.
just set it up to fail.
When you realized, in your mind you're thinking, okay, they may be reluctant to make it.
Uh-huh.
Did you then say, okay, I've got to fashion these parts so that two real names want to do it? Or
Yeah, that's actually the one thing I think about that's sort of businessy when I'm writing something is it castable? If I were an actress, would I want to play this? If I were an actor, would I want to take half of my year and do this? Because I've got a lot of other options, and that's sort of and it's not a bad thing to do just from a writing standpoint, because if it's not good enough for an actor to jump on, you probably haven't done your job well enough, So it's a sort of a good barometer for how well you're mining the character, in the
Can
situation.
you talk about this more, Susannah? Because you have an unbelievable track record in getting the top actresses in the business. I look at this and I'm like going, all right, I want to know what she's thinking about when she's writing those scripts. I know I read an article that was an interview with you where you had a background as an actress, which I'm sure helps. But I'd love to just have you talk about when you say, I want to make sure that part is good enough for an actress, what does that mean?
yeah,
Well, I think the first time I got conscious about that was on Erin Brockovich, and I was working on this script, and it was what was missing was a scene of just horrendous frustration at her place in life, and the story's really good, but I added this, it just felt like that was missing, and I added the scene where she's slamming at the cockroaches in her kitchen, and that's a juicy scene. You want to play that scene if you're an actress. You want to whack at the cockroaches because, those are the things that are killing your life, and I worked on a TV show called Party of Five for a few years, and the guys who ran that show, the woman and man ran that show, were big fans of what they called the turkey sandwich scene, which is when you have a scene where someone is getting really angry about their turkey sandwich when, of course, it's not the turkey sandwich about which they are angry. And the cockroaches, I thought, was sort of a great turkey sandwich scene. And it just, I don't know, a lot of it is just gut. You're like, do I have it all there? Is it, if I feel like I don't really want to play the part, why not? What would make it exciting for me? And it's just sort of
but you're asking that
Yeah.
question to yourself. I mean, you're looking at the part as it exists, let's say now or in your mind, and you're going, what could be more there, even more to play, or
Right.
what could I bring here?
Which is also a writing question. What am I not addressing in this situation? Should I be taking something a little bit farther, and I don't usually ask the actor a question until I've looked at the whole thing. And I honestly don't really sit down and say, okay, now I'm going to read it from the actor's perspective. It's all sort of the same question. Am I making this as good as it can be? Am I mining it as much as I can? Am I pushing it as far as I can push it without getting into something that doesn't feel real anymore? It's the same. The disciplines ask the same question, really. It's just when you get, but this one, obviously, there are a lot of good actors, actresses in that age range, and 1,000 fabulous actresses in the grandmother's age range. So I knew that if I did a good job on those three, we'd have a cast that would excite people. So that, that convinced me, that combined with their financial argument convinced me that that it wouldn't be a waste of my time.
And then once the actor gets involved, do you usually take a pass for the actor, or does it just depend on?
Cameron signed on before Curtis, and she didn't actually have any. I think she was willing to wait until there was a director to dig in. She didn't really have any notes, though. She was
She's just
liked it.
wonderful in that movie.
Yeah, isn't she good? I
Yeah,
really
she
liked
is.
her in
I'd
that.
seen her in that. What was that movie? Things You Can Tell Just by Looking at Her.
Uh-huh.
And it's just this really small movie.
She was
which I
great
thought was
in that.
wonderful. She plays a blind character, and it was the first time I really thought, man, this girl is so untapped in terms of what she can do. She's so cute
Yeah.
that you just don't really know that she can go there, and she really was able to use all of her depth and all of her skill in
Yeah. Yeah.
that movie.
Yeah. I like her a lot, too. She's great in it. I love the scene where she's doing the MTV audition. It just breaks my heart.
Oh yeah.
And then there's a preposterous, she walks into the apartment, It's just a small thing. You're seeing it through the doorway from Tony's perspective, and it's just something about her posture. She drags her failed ass into the apartment. It just breaks my heart.
So now this is an adaptation, and you're reading the book.
Mm-hmm.
And are you sort of reading the book going, making little notes while you're reading, or you're just
No.
laying it aside and kind of starting
I
your
was just
movie?
reading it, and I was on vacation, and, I was just reading it in pieces, and I wasn't thinking, and honestly, there's so much book there. I don't know how many of you have read the book, but there's so much more story and more stuff in the book than is in the movie that it wasn't really clear to me from the get-go what the movie would look like. They're big sections, just not in the movie at all.
And did most of those, did you, try some other plots that you ended up eliminating, or did you pretty much winnow it down before you started writing the script?
No, I didn't try other ones. I mean, you mean from the book?
Right.
Yeah, I tried incorporating. At one point in the book, there's a long section where Maggie goes to Princeton and lives in at Princeton, auditing classes, and that's where she is called on in class, and the teacher tells her she's smart. But she has a long section of living in the basement of the library and getting in a vulnerable position with a guy again and almost getting raped again, and it's fair. And then there's another section where I guess that's also in Princeton, where she's working for a blind woman. And it was sort of interesting that she was working for someone who couldn't see her because so much of her self-esteem came from how she looked. And it was so those two things, I thought, well, it's important that someone tell her she's smart. And it's important that someone see her without seeing her. So then I just shrunk it all down into 3 scenes with the guy.
And put it in the same location.
Yeah.
Where
'Cause
she already was.
You're already jumping locations late in
Right.
the movie. You can't do it again.
And that looked to me like a part of the movie that, well, for me, it would have been challenging. That the fact that it sort of took place in two different main places.
Right.
Well, I thought that there was stuff, again, it was really interesting going back and watching that movie. First of all, there's things that really are pretty unusual, like the beginning of the movie where you made the choice to do the double narrator thing.
Uh-huh.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, originally the double narrator went throughout the whole.
Yeah, and that was another interesting thing, that
Yeah.
it sort of starts and then...
And it had gone all the way throughout, and I had looked at Casino, which does that, and I had looked at About a Boy, which does that, thinking that's
Which
sort
does
of
the multiple...
the dual narrators.
Right.
Because I was interested in that idea. And so that was what the script had. It had more in the beginning, and then it dropped out.
Susanna, was that to solve the problem of the book is about 2 people, so you didn't want to pick one to have the point of view, or?
Yeah, I definitely didn't want to pick one over the other. Absolutely. And I liked the idea of them introducing themselves to us, you know, because I think so much about the movie is about self-esteem, you know, and so I like that idea of knowing right up front that they're talking about themselves in a way that's not entirely healthy, neither of them, you know. And then I started working with Curtis, and it wasn't that dense, the voiceover. And then the poetry kind of took over as voiceover at a certain point. But then I got working with Curtis, and he said, look, we're going to shoot these scenes without voiceover, obviously, because that's how you do it. So let's make them scenes that work. And then maybe we'll use the voiceover, but maybe we won't. He has subsequently told me that was his polite way of saying use the voiceover. But I found that once you dig in there, you can probably find a better way of dramatizing something than a voiceover.
Can you, even if you can't think of it this exact second, I'd love to hear an example of how you wrote a scene, or I just put that in the back of your mind. But where that had voiceover, and then what
you did when he
what
said,
it was to sort of dig in and do it, because
I must have those scripts. I don't know.
Yeah, we
I
have
didn't
stuff.
have a chance to look at it.
We have stuff downstairs, so you could look it up in the library.
Yeah.
But if you could just think of
because I'm actually I'm
You don't want to.
I'm working on a TV pilot right now, and I'm faced with this whole thing of how do you tell a story in 21 minutes, because that's the screen time for a single camera half hour. So I'm thinking of using voiceover, but I would like scenes to be able to stand on their own, and I'm just trying to think, like, what if I don't want the voiceover? I don't know. That's my problem.
I always see it as such a defeat, and I know that sounds silly and almost but I always sort of see it a little bit as a defeat, and I don't know what's my problem. I mean, I'm not a wasp. I don't know why I would see it that way.
What, using voiceover?
Yeah.
Well,
I
I mean,
mean, not that I haven't done it. Of course, I've done it plenty, but
it is sort of seen as the easy way out.
yeah, and
Yeah, and
it's,
if I worked a little harder, I could do it better and not. use
yeah, and I
voiceover.
think
Do you guys understand why we think it's the easy way out? Because you're just basically telling
Person
people,
rather than
so you don't have to find an artful way of saying
Yeah.
it. But by the same token, sometimes voiceover can be wonderful counterpoint, or it allows you to get to the next juicy part of the story without.
I do think people sometimes, audiences, I'm include myself, sometimes you just really love it. If it's done in a certain way, it's kind of a relief, almost like, and you almost feel like you're in good hands, or you're just being like, just tell me what you need me to know. It's like,
Well, it can be great. It can
Yeah.
be those two movies I cited. I thought it was fantastic.
Well, and All About Eve has like 4
yeah, that's
different,
a good example. They have a lot of them.
points of view, and so does Election. I always wondered if they were consciously thinking about All About Eve.
Yeah, actually, every time I see All About Eve, I'm always amazed by the fact that it's doing that, because I never remember that it does that. I just remember the juicy, like, one-on-one scenes. I don't remember that it's a lot narrated, It's interesting. So he sort of said to you, make it beg for its life, make it plead for its life, and in the end...
Right. Well, we're not going to shoot a scene that's dependent on the voiceover. Because it's just not, the movie doesn't hang on it that much. It's not like in a lot of movies where, I think Election does this, where it's commenting on the action, and it's
right, where it's a joke. It's a joke.
Right. It's a dramatic device. It wasn't a dramatic device. It was a way of keeping 2 people alive. I thought of one time when Maggie goes to Ella's place. Initially, there's some voiceover on her trying to work her for some money and trying to work her sympathy, which she didn't need in their performances,
Well, it was also,
You felt
it was actually more interesting, not exactly knowing, because Cameron Diaz managed to convey such a need for a relationship, in addition to being down on her luck, that if you'd said I was looking for money, it would have almost made the scene less than it was, just by going, I wonder if she really just wants a grandmother. I wonder if she really just wants money.
Right. I mean, she wouldn't have been a reliable narrator anyway.
Right.
And she wasn't.
Well, she's a liar. So.
right, she's a liar. So she was a liar in her voiceover. She's a liar in the voiceover in the beginning.
Right.
You know, so, but a lying, yeah, it was better.
So there wasn't a part of you that was going, oh, this is all about siblings and sisters, and I can pour all my sibling and sister stuff into this.
Now, you want to hear something crazy?
I do.
So I decided to write it. I wrote the script. It was very well received. It got a great cast, great director, a wonderful experience, good end product. I go to the movie, I look at it, and I thought, wait a minute. I tried to write this movie 10 years ago. I had tried to write my second year in film school this exact script. I had totally forgotten that I had any interest in this issue. I mean, it was exactly the same. Same characters, same dynamic, same sort of separating to define yourself, to redefine yourself, not in relation to the other person, you know. And so
that's interesting.
The truth is, I don't think too hard about why I want to do things. I think if
Right.
I think too hard about it, it gets conscious, and then it gets careful, and then you're not being driven by the crazy part of you. You're driven by the organized part of you, and that stuff's a lot less good for me. It's really boring what comes out of my conscious mind.
See, we don't know each other. She just walked in here. I mean, you're confirming stuff we've been saying, but people think we're crazy.
Oh, really? Have other people said
I don't
that?
think we're that
No,
crazy.
no, and everybody knows that you're not crazy, and you just said it. And we don't know each other. I mean, I didn't.
There's no reason to believe that I have any grasp.
Well, I
of the
can say
reality.
this: you don't look crazy.
Oh no, yeah, believe me, I know that. I made darn sure.
But I love that you, I mean, I really deeply believe what you just said is true, and it's been true in my life, which is that there's so much unconscious operating that it's best not to try to figure out on a rational level certain things, like why exactly did this assignment come to me, or
You know, Winnie, I hope it's okay that I'm saying this, but when Winnie was writing Wicked, just stop me at any point, but when Winnie was writing Wicked, there were certain issues that were in the book of that story that were going on behind the scenes, a dynamic.
well, for all of us.
For all of you guys, but also just for you, feeling not understood, feeling
Like an
different,
outsider.
and nobody gets me, and
Right.
and the disrespected feeling,
Everything.
all of it. So I kept saying to Winnie, well, Winnie,
love him.
I kept saying, Winnie, this is what you're writing about. It was so weird. It was like so clearly what the issues were.
It was hard for me to see it.
It
I
was
mean,
hard for you to see
If you
it.
had consciously tried to translate it, it would have been leaden.
Exactly.
It wouldn't have been lively, and if it's just this flail, it's so much better. You know?
So talk a little bit about how you do flail. I mean, what is your process? You know, you read the book on vacation. You can talk about any of the things that you've written if you want, but what is your typical process? Are you someone who writes when you're not on a project? Do you write anyway, or do you?
No, in theory I do, but just life is just a little busy. I had maybe 6 weeks this summer when I wasn't on something. And somehow with, we had just moved, and I have 2 kids, and they've got camp, and it just like suddenly turned into this log jam of life stuff. And so it didn't end up happening. I write letters, and that actually I think is, no, you laugh, but that's the thing that made me realize I wanted
like
to
real
write.
letters, not emails.
Letters.
Did you
I
say
actually type
when
them
you
in.
were young, that's what made
No, as
you?
a young adult, after college. I had acted, and I had done journalism, and I was doing both of those things in New York, and I was simultaneously writing letters to all my friends I'd seen every day in college and wasn't seeing every day anymore. And I was just writing tons and tons of letters, and I Xeroxed them before I sent them because I just thought, well, this is a diary more than anything else. I'll hang on to it so I can know what my life was like. I have no idea where those letters are now, but I know I Xeroxed them.
That's proof.
Right?
That's proof there that you're a real writer. A real writer finds themselves doing things like that and not knowing why. I'm keeping copies of my letters.
Right.
Yeah, that's a bit
Yeah,
suspicious.
well.
but then
But then
how
I
did it get
thought-
to dialogue? I mean, how did it?
Well, I I had this acting and theater background, and so that, dramatic arts and performing arts always made sense. And then there was simultaneously this mad love affair with movies, which was just what I'd spend any free time doing. So I had tried to write a screenplay right when I got out of school, and it was a disaster. It was a total train wreck. And then about 4 years later.
What do you mean by a train wreck?
I mean, really, I didn't have any idea.
Do you feel like you couldn't finish it, or you feel like?
Oh, honey, I couldn't start it. It was, it was just, the only time I actually remember working on it was on a train ride from Connecticut to New York on legal paper, and I was writing something, but all I was thinking about was the really handsome guy next to me reading Faulkner. And so, I don't know, I clearly wasn't into it.
But did you say to yourself at that time, this might prove I'm not really a writer, or did you just somehow?
Oh, I don't ever think really. I believed. I mean, I don't know. Will you ever really believe you're right? I don't believe it.
I don't know. Yeah, I know. But
my sister's a doctor, and she's a better writer than I am. So it's true. She's a really good writer.
So I'm wondering, how, from that train wreck, when's the next time you kind of put together a script?
I moved to San Francisco, and I got this horrible job in television called talent coordinator for this television show called Can This Marriage Be Saved? Which was, it was before all this. It was before people actually did this and went on TV and talked about their marriages. It was the vanguard. And my job was to find unhappily married couples who wanted to come on TV and talk. Well, nobody came in, so I had tons of time. I had to be there for 8 hours.
Yeah, because no one wants to think of themselves as unhappily married, however miserable they are.
Yeah, so I had a lot of time, and I thought, well, maybe I'll try the screenplay again. And then I also had...
the same one? Or
no, this was something else.
Right.
No, just a screenplay. And I wrote something really derivative. I just did the Pygmalion story, and I reversed the sexes. And I thought, okay, if I'm going to figure out the form, I'm not going to also reinvent the wheel. This is just for me. I'm just going to figure out if I can make it from page 1 to page 118. So I'm going to do something
That's a good
that
idea.
I understand structurally.
So wait, I'm so curious now. What was the guy that she made over? Do you mind my asking? Because I had that. I thought of doing a reverse Pygmalion before, and I was told that's not a female fantasy for a woman to,
It may not be a fantasy, but it happens constantly.
Yeah.
So it's certainly lifelike.
Yeah, she had invented, the main character was this dynamic businesswoman who had invented the run-proof pantyhose. And her name was Penny, and she called them pennyhose. And so I don't even remember the rest, but she needed a, date or something like that.
And she made
But she needed a presentable one.
Right.
Yeah. So I don't know how, I can't remember how they hooked up or.
You don't have to remember the whole thing. I was just curious.
It wasn't great.
But you she won the Nichols Fellowship, that was a good plan on your part.
Very good planning on my part. Yeah, they pay attention to that fellowship.
So what was that? I mean, how did that idea take hold in your mind, the one that won you that foundation prize?
I don't even know. I don't know. I set it in a place I love. I set it on an island in Maine that I love.
Love.
And, yeah, that's actually something I have written on my computer above it, which is fall in love. Because I think if I'm going to be spending 6 hours a day with these people, sometimes that's more time than I spend with my kids in a day. I better love them as much as I love my kids. Otherwise, if I'm not in love with these people in this place, then it's going to not be fun doing it. And the great thing is you can control it. You actually can make the person someone you love, as opposed to life, where you can't always control that.
That's really true.
We may have talked about this before in this series, but I always think about an idea almost like having a crush on someone. It's that thing that even if you don't want to think about it, your mind slides back to it in the shower or when you're driving. But the in love concept is, if any of you have been in a long-term relationship, you better be able to look back at some point and go, no, why am I here? Didn't I love this person once? What's going to get you through that really bad patch where it's dull or you're not connecting with it. You really have to go back to that core of love.
Yeah.
It's the
Yeah.
only thing that'll get you through it. Otherwise, you're just going, why am I doing this? Because it was a commercial idea. Not
Oh.
enough to get you through it.
Yeah, it's not. It's really not. And because it's going to be easy is really not going to get you through it. Difficult and something you care about is so much easier than easy and you don't give a shit. You know?
So
Having slogged through one of those recently.
you mean because in the end, one of those where you don't really care and you're not really invested isn't easy at all.
No, it's torture to sit down and work on something you don't care about. I don't have the work ethic for it. I actually have a pretty bad work ethic, except I want to be at my desk. So I end up there a lot when I'm, in control of what I'm writing.
So what is your are you a daytime writer or are you a
By nature, and if I had my druthers, I'd write from 11 at night till 4 in the morning, and then draw all the shades, and wake up and go right to my desk again. But that's not what my life is, and there are a whole lot of other things I care about just as much as I care about writing. So, I've become a daytime writer, but I don't get out of my pajamas. That's my one.
Yeah, well, I think it's one of the best things about the job.
Yeah, I become.
I really do.
Yeah, I become a dramatically less good writer the minute I get dressed.
Oh, that's so funny.
It's true because then you're in clothes for the world, And the little part of your brain that thinks, I'm almost out of milk, aren't I? Can actually do something about it, Whereas if you're in your pajamas and you think, I'm almost out of milk, oh, well, I hope someone does something about that, Because I can't, I'm in my pajamas, So you don't get down those roads. I have another computer that has it, but it's in the house, and my
But it's
office
not
is
what you write
detached,
on.
so it's not what I write on.
Well, that's not a bad idea.
Get a second
I have to
computer.
say, I've never thought of that. I don't know why.
Really good. It increased my efficiency dramatically.
Yeah, I bet.
And I'm a really inefficient writer. For any 120-page script, I probably write 300 pages. I wish I could find another way of doing it, but I just overwrite. Don't need that. It's really like
I do
8
exactly
steps
the same
forward
thing.
and 7.5 back. And it's
That's
just
exactly what we
Do you outline?
kind of, yes,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, not very well.
stupid bad outlines.
Right, me too.
I mean, they sort of give you an idea of where you're headed, which is important. But if I write to them, then I'm missing all this other stuff because for that, for all that, 8 steps forward, this thing that happened on step 7.5 is this little gem that you never would have found if you were being,
Well, to me, it's like you do
Religious
the
on that.
minimum amount of work each step along the way to get to the next step. So you don't want to think through the whole movie
Right.
before you've written it.
Right.
Aside from everything else, it's just boring
Yeah.
to have, because, like sometimes I work from an outline. Sometimes I don't mind it, but I never slavishly stick to it.
Yeah.
It's just a way of me kind of figuring out what it is that I'm doing enough
Yeah.
to do some version of it.
I could probably not write. I mean, I'd have a very hard time writing something without some overall sense of where I was going. I think that might be disastrous.
Because if you feel like you've got a great ending, or an ending at least, let's say that you respond to, that you feel excited about, and you can picture it,
Right.
then that does give you. I mean, without that, I feel I couldn't
Really?
get
An
started.
end scene?
Well, it doesn't have to be. I don't have to know exactly the ending. I
Uh-huh.
think I have to, not the scene. What the scene's going to look like, I don't
Right.
often never know.
Right.
But I feel like I have to understand the feeling and where it's going to go to,
Right.
and what the resolution feeling is going to be.
Right.
And I feel like if I have that, then I feel like I have that in my hip pocket, and I kind of know the story does go somewhere. It does travel some kind of distance.
Uh-huh.
And that makes me feel like I can start,
Yeah.
or I can write it.
Gives you just enough confidence to feel like you know what you're doing.
Exactly.
And-
And no more.
So when you're overwriting, like what are you writing? Are you writing scenes like you're
Scenes that won't be in the movie.
Yeah.
Characters that won't be in the movie. And I wish I
I'm feeling so much
feeling so
better.
relieved.
Ah,
Because
so-
I
such
also
a
know that
joy.
a lot of you are thinking, well, it's just these two eccentric women. They're friends. They're kind of.
Why she's projecting this onto you? I feel like we have a whole other different relationship. I feel like they think we're fantastic.
Well, but
Maybe a little eccentric.
But I like the
kooky
feeling
ants.
of here's Susannah Grant. Like I say, we don't even know her. I mean, I just met her once. We never talked. And she's saying a lot of the same things. There must be, you know what it really is? Never mind, I didn't mean to project. It's just mainly that I'm feeling so relieved because I feel that way about myself. And then I hear this from Susannah, and I just feel relieved.
Well,
again.
I feel relieved to hear it from you. I mean, 'cause you sit there thinking, I'm such an idiot.
This is the
What's
night.
wrong? When am I going to learn that I don't need to do? I mean, how many scripts have I written? At this point, I've
lot.
written a fair number, you know, you think. But the thing I always feel like is that it's kind of like scrambled eggs, you know, and you first put them in the pan, and they just are runny and disgusting, and very slowly you just keep stirring and stirring and stirring, and a little heat and a little stirring. Eventually you got something that holds together and
that someone would
deals.
want.
and someone would want if they want eggs.
If they like eggs.
I just working on this. I'm doing the pilot of The Devil Wears Prada. Now I've never read the book, and I really need to reinvent it so that it's a series. And I just, because Winnie and I have been doing this class and we're talking about process, I'm kind of in it, but I'm also really hyper aware of, observing it and how my mind is working. And one of the things that I like to do, I have a background as an improvisational actress, as does Winnie, but I like to write scenes because I'm always so afraid that I won't hear the characters. And then when I don't know who the characters are, I'll just write scenes. I'll just think of a scene and maybe it'll go in and maybe it won't. And I'll start having fun, and then this part of my mind will be going, boy, you're wasting a lot of time.
Sure are entertaining yourself, aren't you?
Yeah, this can't go in. You only have 21 minutes. And then I'll go, just relax. I don't even know who the characters are. We're not shooting this tomorrow, but maybe I'll get an idea. Just let yourself play. Play. And then it's like, whoa, a lot of trees are giving their lives for this stuff, you know?
But I think this is a cousin to what Susannah, what we were all just saying before about love, because I think that when you can start to fall in love with some aspect of the story, with some aspect of those people, with something, that love that you're feeling is gold.
Right.
Because it's going to be somehow something that I just remember, this is interesting about that word. I remember the one note that I got from Ed when I first handed in the pilot of My So-Called Life was, I was very thinking about teens and very much interested to make sure the teens seemed authentic, and I was not just thinking about them, but I think falling in love with them. And he said to me, but what about the parents? He said, you haven't loved them. And I didn't even say to him, oh, I love these teens so much, but it was just on the page. And the parents were these sort of stick figure, mean parents. And they weren't just mean, they were stick figures. I mean, it's fine to be mean, I think, because there's plenty of meanness, I mean, myself included, but it's, especially in that parental mode, but they weren't alive, and he was dead on. Like, I just had forgotten to love them. What is it I love about them?
Right.
Like, where's my compassion for them?
It's compassion, that's all it is. It's just,
Exactly.
in a lot of the characters I've written, before I've written them, there's been the little likable worry, which is that's the worry with girls, likable. The worry with men is heroic. The worry with women is likable. Got to be likable. And I've written a lot of people that before I've written them, people have worried about. But if you have deep compassion for any aspect of the human experience, and just know that everybody's just doing their best, and some people are working with less or different equipment, the likability question won't even come up,
Well, it's also the things that the the things that we most want to hide about ourselves as people are also the things that I think other people would be really interested in hearing. And it's the same thing about your characters. So you're going, well, you know, I think this is a huge danger in movies with female protagonists, and I hear it too a lot because I like to write edgy characters and, you know, have girls be naughty and do things that they're not supposed to do. And I always hear, well, shouldn't we make them likable? And usually that means, you know, they don't speak up. They don't do anything objectionable or human, and therefore you can't like them because they're simps.
Right, right.
And
You just got to get under the behavior, you know, and support it with something else.
Wait, say more. What do you mean by that?
If the behavior is offensive, for instance, screwing your sister's boyfriend,
yes,
you just have to really understand what would make me do that. What place in life would I have to be in to do that? Probably a really unhappy place, and you just have to build it from there and feel for that place, and then the behavior is just what happens after. It's not
Because
it's
nobody
not
sets
about the
out.
behavior. When
Nobody
you think about,
says, "Oh, I'm going to really upset my sister in the worst possible way. I'm going to be a betrayer." Nobody wakes up saying that.
right.
People say, "I know I shouldn't, but oh my God, you know, he's so, you know, he's exactly like he symbolizes something to me." Or
well, also,
Or, you know, that bitch, how can she kick
Yes,
me out?
yes.
I'm struggling, and she can help me.
Right, and I'm
And-
justified.
and, yeah, and then I'm a little drunk, and then, well, fuck her, you know?
well, you built
him.
you built to it really well. To me, starting in the scene in the restaurant when Toni Collette, Rose couldn't resist trying to ask
right.
for a job for her.
Yeah.
And I thought that's really when it started. And then she was misunderstood when she'd had that horrible thing, and then she was acting out.
Right.
And she was a character that acted out.
Yeah.
But it's such heinous behavior, but you understand it.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you understand it too with her, you know, her inferiority complex.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's all, I mean, at that point, it's all she thinks, it's the only thing she has to bank on,
that she has. Right.
you know?
Right. So you're saying your job becomes, I have to put myself in that person's shoes. No
Yeah,
pun intended. And no, because I mean that's an actual thought I've had. You know, a lot of times, like, you know, just put myself in their shoes. Because a lot of times people, I don't. Do you do that with your men characters? I mean, yeah. But I mean, do you sometimes have the thought go, okay, this is. I mean, what do you feel like you're using anything different when you're writing a man?
I don't think so. I mean, I think I'm more like, you know, Simon Stein than, you know, Ella, honestly. I don't know, maybe not. But, you know, I don't think so. You know, someone asked me recently about Charlotte's Web, was it hard to write animals? And it hadn't even occurred to me really that I was writing animals. You know? I mean, they were already there, obviously, as pretty rich characters to start with. So,
Right,
but do
you
you
weren't
do you
thinking
think
that-
about gender? Do you think what would a guy think?
Well, sometimes I do. I mean, sometimes I feel. I mean, I've had every kind of feeling. Like sometimes I just really identify with the guy character, and I feel like I'm right there, you know, with them, so to speak. And other times I literally feel confused. Like I go, I don't understand what a guy would do here. Like
I've
and I have,
collaborated a lot with men, partly because sometimes I can, like, there's certain shows that I've worked on or certain things that I've written where I completely get the guys, and they're just as real to me as the women. And then there's other times, like in Romy and Michelle, I flat out was trying to do a reaction to the fact that women in those kind of comedies are always just servicing the guys. So I just flat out wrote guys that weren't going to have much characters or personalities, and they were just on the sidelines. And they were, because at one time I remember on the set, Alan Cumming was there, and I honestly can't do his accent, but he was like, "I'm just like the girl in this movie, right?" And I'm like, "Yeah, you are."
You're the girl.
But I was thinking about something. I just love this idea of compassion, because I worked on something once where I struggled with two characters. One was the it was the kind of person that was bugging the protagonist. And it was based on someone that I really didn't like in real life. And as a result, I made her not a worthy adversary for the protagonist because I didn't love her.
Yeah.
I just was like, dude, did a hatchet job on her.
Yeah.
And so I had to completely rewrite that character so that, because otherwise it was like you've got a person and then you've got a stick figure, as Winnie was saying, and then it's not interesting. The other thing, there was another character, it was the great kind of character that's out of control and acts out. It's a fun character to write because they make shit happen,
Right.
you know?
Right.
Well,
And this was an overweight, angry girl who was drinking and kind of hiding it from her friend. And the director said, I want you to write a monologue where we hear what it feels like to be her. Where all this anger is coming from. And I'd literally come up with her as a plot engine, you know, literally just like, I need shit to happen. This took place in a woman's bathroom at a pickup bar, and I wanted to bring a man in. So I'm thinking, how do I bring a man in? Well, this naughty girl brings the man in.
Right.
Why is she naughty? She's drinking and she's not supposed to be, you know, so I was really just, and I had another friend who was a naughty girl. I couldn't get into this character. I was so judgmental. I was just as judgmental as the protagonist. I went to an OA meeting. And I just, and at the OA meeting, of course, I was there to do research, and I didn't have a literal eating disorder, but oh my God, I'm like, I so related to what was going on. I ended up going to those OA meetings for 3 months. And eventually I did write this monologue, but having nothing to do with anything that happened in the OA meeting.
Right.
I just needed to go. My father had just died, and I needed to go to some OA meetings for 3 months,
Yeah.
you know, for whatever reason. But, you know, these are just kind of examples of what you can do to, I'm sorry, I just
No, that
went off
that
because
makes-
it's this idea of love and compassion for these people. You don't want to write. I mean, and I even love my villains. And going back to Romy and Michelle, if I was going to play any part in that movie, I would have played Christy the bitch. I was just like, I want to play this part so much. She's so mean. She
Yeah.
sleeps so well at night.
You know, one thing you said is I think something I've sort of had in my brain all along, because it's like a primary acting rule is that you just can't judge your character. If you're judging your character, you're just probably doing a terrible job. You know, if you have any judgment about them.
You can observe them and you can dislike their behavior.
Sure, you're not gonna like what they're
and you
doing.
can analyze. I mean, you can look at all the things that it might have come from,
Right,
and think about what brought it on.
right.
But that's not the same as judging.
Judgment is going to get you nowhere. This character's bad is a really bad way to start.
Or, well, that reminds me of that thing that happened to me once that I never forgot. But it was just this one time I was talking like into a little group with a group of writing students, and they were all going to write for television or wanted to. And this one girl raised her hand and she said she was writing a West Wing spec. And she talked about West Wing, but then I said, "Oh, does it?" And so, what happens to I forget one of the characters, one of the women characters, and she said, "Oh, I hate that character, so I left her out."
That'll probably go over well with the folks at West Wing.
But the thing that I thought was a shame that I never said to her that night, because I didn't even think to say it. But what I realized later driving home was that you left out like the exploring, something really that you could have really gotten to, because I know I've worked on TV shows where I have actually come to hate some of the characters, and that is some of the best writing I've done, I feel, because I took that passionate feeling I was feeling, and I kind of poured it into writing them. Do you know what I mean? Or exploring something about them that I guess I took it as a sign that there must be, I couldn't always figure it out, but there must be a connection between me and them.
Right.
Because that's just like in life when you take an
It's the
instant.
one person who just drives you
If,
crazy.
if that person drives you crazy, there's
Why?
yeah, there's always a terrible reason why.
Yeah, some horrible thing you have to face in yourself. Ugh.
Exactly, and that facing it in myself, I found that it would bear fruit.
Right,
it would
I'm
bear a
sure.
good script. So now let me ask you something. Do you think we should open up to a few questions before the break?
Sure. We can open up to questions, and then we'll come back, and we'll keep doing what we're doing, and then have more questions. I know that. I mean, guys, that alone. That
Resonated.
alone.
That really resonated with me, and it is absolutely true. The minute I go out to run or something, I meet my neighbors and I start talking,
yeah,
and then
it's all
all of a sudden,
done.
what are you going to do? And blah. But
May as
thank
well
you for
just
that.
not even sit back down.
The scene, the fat pig scene, which I felt it was the director. Was there a cut there? Or did the director pull away? I felt there was a pull away from.
Do you mean camera-wise?
Yeah, or it wasn't. The scene seemed to have ended before the emotional, before the impact of her, or there was a cut missing or something. Did you get? Was there anything suspicious?
She says, "Get out of my life," and she shoves it at her and walks out of the frame, and it
Yeah.
ends on camera, doesn't
She
it?
walks out of the frame very, very quickly, and she was just. I was just wanted to see her.
I don't know that I ever saw it long. I know that getting it down to length was a really big deal because it's not a short movie.
Yeah.
And it was really not a short movie when it was first put together.
How long was the script that you guys shot?
It was, it's probably about 120 pages. But I have come to realize that the whole minute a page thing is not true, at least for my work.
No, not if you
Like-
want to give the actors some breathing room and.
Yeah, and emotion just gobbles up time. So this was almost 3 hours when they first put it together. The one I just directed was almost 3 hours when it was 257 for a 120-page script, 118-page script.
Wow.
So if it's emotional stuff, it's going to eat up a lot of time. So I don't know. That might have been a factor. I don't know. I don't.
How that might have changed your your outlook as a writer. That's what I'm interested
See,
in.
what I hoped was that it would make me more efficient and that I would know what I needed, and it doesn't. Nothing makes you smart as a writer. You're still a huge idiot the first time you sit down to write. Anything. And I thought, I was on maybe my third script, and I thought, I am in the wrong business if I am this clueless. I just wrote 2 scripts, and I have no idea how I'm going to do this one. I don't have any idea. And
So how do you get started, though?
you just flail. You just flail and weep and procrastinate. And but I spoke to, my aunt was married to Herb Sargent, who was writer and head of the Writers Guild East and who passed away in the past year. And his brother's Alvin Sargent, who is a spectacular screenwriter. And I was sort of mentioned this under my breath to my aunt, sort of wondering if Herb had problems with writing. And she said, well, whenever Alvin starts a script, he calls up Herb and says, this one's going to get me. I don't know. I can't do it.
Well,
Can't do it. And
That
I
is
thought,
wild.
okay.
Many, many years ago, I dated Tony Bell, and we wind up at dinner with Alvin Sargent and his wife at the time. And Alvin Sargent had written Julia. He wrote Paper Moon, which I love Paper Moon so much that I went out. I got Addie Pray, which was the book it was based on. And I'd read this, not knowing I was going to meet Alvin Sargent.
Didn't he write Ordinary People?
Yeah.
He wrote Ordinary People.
Yeah, Mom.
So here I know I'm going to go have.
Panicked at the beginning of every one.
So here I am at dinner with Alvin Sargent, and I'm the little pisher at that time. So I get up my nerve and I say, Mr. Sargent, what's your process? I mean, I start asking him, how does he do it? He goes, I don't know. I have any idea how the hell I do it. The end. That was the end of that discussion. I was like, what? How can Alvin Sargent not know?
I have an Alvin Sargent anecdote.
You did? Oh my God, Alvin Sargent.
Well, it's not very much of an anecdote, but apparently Alvin Sargent said to somebody, or said that what he wanted on his tombstone was the words "finally a plot." And that is just something I never forgot, because that's how I feel like, Last week we were, I mean, every week sort of, we've been talking about, the whole idea of the plot. And my theory now that I'm older and not that much wiser, but a little teeny bit wiser, is I feel like a plot is just an excuse, and it doesn't matter what your plot is on some level. Oh, you need to have one. But I no longer believe that, I mean, I sort of do, but I'm starting to not believe that it really matters what plot you end up choosing, as long as you do fall in love with something, and also as long as you have something there that you can pour what you're currently, like, just stuff that matters to you into.
Right.
And it's just so funny because, like, then there'll always be that time in the process for me where I look at my plot and it doesn't seem like a plot to me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It doesn't seem like much of a plot. And I kind of go, oh, that's not really much of a story now, is it? But I think it has to do with familiarity breeds contempt on some level, or that I've gotten to know it, and so I'm seeing only the mistakes in it, or the pitfalls.
Yeah, and really, at the end of every script I've ever written, I looked at it and thought, oh, God, who cares? This is incredibly dull.
But wait a minute, you don't ever also
so
go,
boring.
this is such genius, I can't believe I have to
Yeah,
cut
but
it
then
in."
that's really immediately
Yeah,
followed by,
exactly.
who cares? Because you've been looking at it for so long and you think, I'm so embarrassed. I thought this had any value. And now I have to turn it in.
No, I've so been there. Every
And then you
time.
give it on a Friday, and your poor spouse has to suffer through that weekend where you're going, oh my God, they're reading, oh my God. It's just horrible.
Do you let your spouse read your stuff?
Uh-huh.
And do you lurk
Little-
around?
Yeah, I use him more sparingly these days. Just because,
Not to overtax him.
Yeah, and I'm a little bit smarter, and so, I don't use him for just the general, I really think I don't have any idea what I'm doing. Just the breakdowns I have on my own now, to a certain extent. But when I know I have a problem, like yesterday, I said to him, I have this chunk of time where I just realized my character isn't doing anything. And so I like him to have a certain amount of knowledge, because if he and I are walking the dog together, if he knows what I'm working on, I can just introduce that question there, and maybe by the end of the dog walk, I'll have something to go back and do, So, yeah, I keep him.
Yeah, I make all my friends that I walk with hear my ideas.
God help the friends.
Do you have a lot of writer friends, or just enough, or
Just enough.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't talk to that many people. My husband always knows what I'm doing, and I have one other friend who was a writer from film school who always knows what I'm doing.
And that's
I always
sort
know
of-
what she's doing. We're sort of stealth co-writers, we say.
Well, that's kind of like us.
Yeah.
I mean, that's sort of
good.
been a theme in this class
Yeah.
also, that that you might not want to tell that many people what you're doing.
Oh.
I
I think that talking about it just eliminates the need to write it for me.
Yeah. Yes. Well, this will be, we'll take your question, then we'll have our break, and we'll make sure everybody gets to ask questions.
2 weeks ago, Don Bruce was here,
Uh-huh.
and he didn't sound like anybody else who's been here. Don Bruce said, he set his clock, his kitchen timer.
Uh-huh.
He could tell us how long it took him to write a movie, 80 hours.
Uh-huh.
He writes an outline, he goes and sits, he never looks back.
Uh-huh.
He goes page 1, page 2, page 3. I mean, how do you account for a guy like that? That's not
Well, and then I think maybe if I knew I didn't have the options, I would be that smart. Maybe it's just because I think, well, I could just, maybe if I say, you have 80 hours to write this script, and whatever is done at 80 hours is your script, maybe it would be good. And
But
it would be fun.
it's just his process, because I saw him yesterday. I told him how much everybody had gotten out of him being here, and just how it was fascinating, because he really has this number of hours, like every day he decides how many hours he's going to work the next day, and then he sets a kitchen timer, and he's really got this whole thing worked out. But for him, it really is about, he feels that he's too hard on himself to do it at all if he doesn't have that. It's just a little way that he's come up with,
to survive.
to survive. Susanna was talking about that getting to that part of your unconscious and not even realizing what you'd written, and writing and writing and writing. And we all have our different ways to allow ourselves to get out of our own way enough to let that other stuff come out. To me, it's always like a miracle. I always feel like it's coming from somewhere, not me.
Yeah.
But how do I get that part of me that's going, got to get the outline done, this isn't that good, is this the best thing that was ever written? I wonder what Lauren Weisberger is going to think of this. What do you care? You know, you know what I mean? That's all. He is so hard on himself, and I really believe him. He's so harshly judgmental. He had very judgmental parents and was raised Catholic. And, you know, he said he was raised in a home with 5 kids, and you would go into the living room and it would be clean and quiet when the kids were young. That's harsh. So he's internalized that. He's internalized this punishment and the self-punishment. So that's what the kitchen timer is for Dawn. That's what I got it even more yesterday, just talking to him and going, this guy's in a lot of fear and pain, and that's why he came up with that. So that's what works for him.
Well, also, I mean, one thing I just want to say that's going through my mind right now is, you know, it's really interesting. I mean, the incredible relief I'm hearing just talking to you and just hearing what you're saying, and it's really making me feel like I'm less alone. All of the things that I want to feel like I'm not in the wrong profession. I haven't made it. I'm not a fraud. All of those type of things, because you're someone
She's not joking either. I'm not joking.
No, seriously.
Either. I mean, honestly,
Yeah.
I hope this has gotten real for you guys. I know on some level you can sit here and go, easy for them to say, and we are.
Right.
We're in a fantastic, we have built genuine
yeah, we're
careers for
lucky.
ourselves. That's why you drove across town and you're listening to us talk. But it's not, this is still real. It's still real for us.
Well, what I was going to say is that I feel like this is why we wanted to have the class. I mean, this experience and the Dawn experience and all the experiences that we've had, because we didn't want, I mean, one of the reasons we planned it this way is we didn't want to just be us sitting up here just talking from us, from our perspective. We wanted to try to show that there's different writers in our community. We all have a lot in common, more than we realize sometimes, obviously. But we also are all individuals, and we're all struggling in our own way to express ourselves, and sometimes succeeding, sometimes flailing or failing, but we're always working at that. And we wanted to show what that array is. And we didn't, you know, we really just chose people that we thought were cool people, that we also thought that we knew enough to ask. But it was really, that was the inspiration to go, all right, there's Don Roos, and there's Audrey Wells, and there's Susannah, and there's all these different, you know, different personalities, but they're all struggling to do a similar thing. How are they doing it?
And how do you get out of your own way so that you can honor this burning desire that you have inside of you to create something?
And it was never about, well, there's probably, out of all of these people, there's probably a right way.
Well, I was pretty sure
the
you
opposite.
were going to have the right way, so I'm a little disappointed about that part of it.
Maybe it is the right way, you know?
Exactly, exactly. But you know what I mean, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it was all about, you know, not the black and white of is it the right way or the wrong way, but it's all about, like, you know, what is this process like, and why, and how can we go deeper? How can we go deeper with the process together? Sharing together what it's like. I know for me it's helpful.
Yeah, it's always helpful to know you're not the only failure in the world.
On that note, let's take our break, and then we'll come back and we'll really open it up to questions.
Thank you. Yeah.